Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, and we're live. Here we go. Welcome to Business Velocity through the 5 Facets of Business podcast. We're your hosts, Dave Newell and Hannah Panuski. With our guests, we explore actionable insights and share stories of real businesses. Whether you're a startup or a seasoned business leader, understanding how to harness the 5 facets of your business will help you propel your growth and achieve business velocity. Hannah, who are we talking to today?
We are talking to two individuals that I'm very excited to talk to because you have spoken about them many, many times, and we have lots in common, it sounds like. So Dean Hires and Pete Makalek co-founded SagePresence in 2001. Founded on their shared histories in film and storytelling, the company was established to help business professionals present themselves with more confidence and engaging personal presence. Over the years, Dean and Pete have coached business pitches, which have won client firms over $16 billion worth of projects, and in the process, honed a curriculum that helps professional service firms build the presence skills of their team so the whole organization can operate as a more unified, brand-consistent team, providing clear and consistent communication and behavior throughout every step of their client's journey. Every part of that, I know you and I can resonate with. Absolutely. Dean is a bold risk taker, yet his power source comes from emotional sensitivity and transparency to read people and inspire them. Pete brings a lifelong curiosity and passion for clear and open communication to his work at SagePresence. Highly recommend everybody go check out their credentials on LinkedIn. But before I ramble on about how excited I am to talk to these people, why don't we actually bring them in?
Let's do it.
Cool.
Oops.
Hey.
Hey, Pete and Dean. So excited to have you guys here. I know Hannah mentioned that I talk about you all the time, which is actually true. That's not just something that we're saying to make you feel good about yourselves, even though I hope it does. But we do talk about you all the time. I have to give a shout out to both of you because you're the reason I'm in the consulting world in the first place. You all took a risk on me back in 2012, 12 years ago, and gave me a shot to come and work with you all, mentored me, taught me the ropes, showed me how to do things, and I'm always eternally grateful for that. So I'm excited to have you on the podcast and to share just kind of your wisdom, your experience, all the things that you bring to the world in this platform. So thanks so much for joining us, guys.
Thanks so much for having us. And Dave, I just got to echo back at you. For everybody who's watching this, Dave is the one who got away. So he is somebody that we so admire, and of course we are happy for you often in your own line of work. But you really are someone that we thought stood out amongst all the people that we've worked with. So honored to be here.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks so much. Well, you all have taught me so much about presence, about how to show up in a room, about how whether that's speaking, whether that's leading a meeting, whether that's a one-on-one coaching conversation, and you have a book about winning presence. You have all sorts of content. You help people win bids. Like, you really do kind of carry with you this formula, this framework, this way of being for how to just show up like a leader in a room. But I'd love for you to just hop in and help me understand, like, when you say presence, what are you talking about? What does that mean? What does that look like?
It's a great question because, a lot of people have ideas about what that word means. And we do take a pretty broad brush to the concept. So the way we think and talk about it is it's really your impact as you interact with anybody in any scenario, whether you are showing up physically or if it's just your voice in an interaction. It's owning your presence in interactions that involve other human beings, face-to-face, virtual, hybrid.
I think about it, it's basically however you're being, however you are. How you are is the answer to presence, and presence is constant. So, if you watch your spouse sleeping, there is a presence to that. If you're interacting, there's a presence. When you're checked out, there's a presence. And, kind of a morbid place to go, but if you've ever been to a funeral, no matter how hard they try to make that person look like they're alive, the presence is gone. Presence is our being alive. The thing that people don't pay attention to as much as they could, Hannah, you probably do, you can control that, or you can participate in it. You can play with it. And I've had a few turning points. Life has had some certain struggles for me over the last year. And I have discovered the power of joy, simply being joyful, and how so many people are affected by presence, like the world determines their presence, just like happiness is a thing out there. Joy comes from in here. I love my moments, and by doing that, I can manage my presence, determine what's coming out, as opposed to just being a mirror to what's coming in.
I like the piece about the mirror, right? Like often, to me, it inserts the question of like, well, who's the driver of the presence in the room, right? Because you're saying, in essence, that we can be, we're often influenced by the presence of what's happening, right? So like you gave a couple different contexts, like whether that's a funeral or, being in a team meeting. So when you say winning presence, how do you control yourself? How do you drive presence in a room? How are you the one that's leading the presence in the room, as opposed to being the, not necessarily victim or recipient of what's already taking place?
I like that. Victim. So let me take the first run at this. You can't exactly control the presence in a room, although we very frequently do. What you can control is the presence in yourself. And if that presence is strong, you will likely influence the others. And so I'm going to look at this on two sides of an equation. I think just like the Earth is magnetic because it has a north and a south pole, similar but opposites. Opposites inside of a person create a magnetism. And what I tend to go for myself is it's joy and dead serious. I'm going to be playful. I'm going to be alive. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be serious. I'm talking about stuff that's important. And those two together create a magnetism. And so when it comes to owning a room, I tend to bring in the boldness of absolute confidence. And then I buffer that with a lot of fun and the joy, it's a command and nurture vibe. And that's how I create magnetism. So I'll close with the idea that it's opposites. And present doesn't have to be opposites, but controlling the room is grabbing both sides of an equation and bringing that magnetism into the room.
Yeah. Pete, you want to jump in on that one, or how do you do it?
Probably the most relevant aspect of this that comes up in conversations with our clients is like networking. A lot of people have questions like, I generally hate networking because I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So they'll say, well, typically what I do is I dread going, and then I show up and I make kind of one sort of half-assed attempt to interact with folks. I sort of circumnavigate the room, and then it's like, well, yeah, I guess I've done my job here. I can take off. And so their presence really reflects that. It reflects that they don't know what they're doing, that they're uncomfortable, that they don't really want to have any conversations. Although, maybe part of them would love it if somebody else started a conversation with them, maybe. What we can get people to is actually enjoying that process and bringing that enjoyment to it, so that the moment that they walk in, people see them and recognize them and are kind of attracted to them and want to have a conversation with them. So that's the kind of difference that I think people are looking for, but really often have just no idea how to do that. So it's questions like, yeah, but I really hate it. How do you get me to not hate it?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I love the magnetism of the poles, right? When Hannah and I talk a lot about in leadership, we talk about tension, right? We talk about there's a lot of tensions that show up in leadership. Like, do we focus on the individual or do we focus on the team? Do we focus on ideation or execution? And the answer to all those is, of course, is yes. Do we do authority or enrollment? Yes, right? But when do you do which one? Right. And actually, if you think about like the best comedians in the world, the best speakers in the world, what do? They invite tension, and then they hold that space for everybody. And then at the end, they release it. Right. Like the best comedians create tension and then release you from it in a comical way. But I love what you're saying, Dean, about that. being able to hold both spaces, and then you're kind of inviting, you're pulling people in. There's a magnetism to it. And Pete, what I heard you saying is, in a networking environment, you only have one side of the coin, which is I hate this, right? But if you brought hate this plus joy, maybe you're holding a unique space. I don't know.
Let me hop in because you brought up comedians. Stephen Colbert had an article called Loving the Bomb, and he talked about a turning point for him when he went from okay to great. And it was when he was on stage and a joke bombed. It didn't work. And he just sort of thought that was fun. Now, the problem with the article, it doesn't tell you how he doesn't know how he got there, but he got to this point where it became kind of fun when his joke didn't work. And at that point, he was free. And so when I work with stage presenters, people speaking on big stage, one of the things we practice is loving when things go wrong. You said the thing you weren't planning to say. The slide didn't work. Tech goes wrong. The person you're bringing in from a virtual conversation didn't get a connection. Then I've learned how to have fun when things go wrong, when I get a tough question. And there's an absolute freedom that comes through your presence when you're just okay that things don't work. It's kind of funny, so I like it. I like being interrupted. I like when things go wrong, and set me free.
Yeah, and I think what happens is when something unexpected happens, you are forced to be in the moment. And that's where your presence kind of peaks. When you are present in the moment right now, that's when you are kind of most visible. So it sounds like Colbert got to the point where it's like, yeah, he really, really loved that.
Right.
But I know that Colbert specifically studied improv, so that's probably a big part of it.
Yeah, for regular people, it's focus on choosing joy. You can, like actors do, like Hannah, the script calls for you to be sad or you to be happy or you to be mad. So you've obviously practiced finding that. And in stage, it sometimes is a little bigger and a little bit more physical. In screen, which it's feeling it. I just have to feel it. So if you practice triggering joy in random places, that's kind of what I did. And I would practice feeling joy when my wife was angry at me, which, that could be taken. I was
going to say, how'd that go?
Finding joy in the fact that it can be kind too. The joy in the fact that we're getting to something we have to work out. But when I discovered I can have joy in negative circumstances, I'm free. And so that's the practice that Colbert wasn't able to articulate is you want to practice that feeling of joy. And I do go back to my balance. Important and joy, those two really create a powerful spot where you can be okay when things go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, I have so many questions I would love to ask both of you, but the respect of time and not getting too rambly, a lot of what you're sharing is making me think about like different skill sets that allow you to be present. And, we had talked about before the call, I got a degree in theater and then I ended up getting basically really good at starting small businesses because I was a producer and I was making content all the time. And then that grew into other skills that I got from other jobs and then started working with Dave and have since grown my skills since then through other certifications and trainings, et cetera. So I think the question that I'll offer is what skills brought you into this work and what skills do you use now to do this work? Is that different? Is it the same? I would be curious to know.
It really feels like it's all related, all kind of the same thing. The long story, super distilled, is Dean and I were working with actors in an acting training program that we had created. And we were focusing on story and presence. We were teaching them story and presence because it was an improv. It was improv at its core, and these folks needed to know story in order for a scene to go from beginning to end. What we discovered very early on is without story, it would just be middle forever and no progress. So yeah, we were teaching presence and story, and we were discovering that these skills were making an impact for them in their daily lives, both home and at work. And a little light went on and we started working with businesses.
I agree that it's been essentially the same principles, because all of life really is a stage. So stage presence that we were working on with actors, not just story, but actors were freaked out by the camera. We learned to appreciate the camera. We would practice feeling. And a couple strange things happened that really cement my agreement with Pete that it's all the same thing. We had some strange gigs in our career. The business world pulled us out of film into business, which wasn't really our intention initially. And some of the strange gigs we got is we got hired by the US government to teach acting to covert agents. So we were doing gigs as spy trainers, essentially.
Oh, wow.
We taught them the same things we taught the actor. And we helped them deal with interrogation, deal with building a role they can hide in. We get gigs from lawyers that started out like helping lawyers network, but it turned into courtroom trial coaching. And what do they put us on? Murder trials. And so we got in the same skill set. And then we get into helping companies land their big pitches, typically competitive bid scenarios. We're either going to go with this architecture firm or that architecture firm or this consulting or those two. And we just started using the same skills and helping people win. So bottom line is, these are the skills of presence. Put it where you want to put it. Put it in the courtroom or onto the presentation stage. It is how you are in a world that really cares about who it is that we're interacting with, and are they being honest, and are they being passionate, and do they care, are they serious, all of those things, and would they be fun to work with, all of those things. It's the skills of presence. We just learned them all in actor training and working in film.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the main audience that comes to mind for the work that we do is the leader of a small business. So then the people that work for the leader of the small business being the main audience that we often help people, prepare for and present to. So I'd be curious to know, from the work that you guys have done, what is something that you feel like, to the small business leaders who are listening, what is something that you would offer them to start thinking about and working on, just based on the challenges you've seen people have?
Yeah, let me start on this one, and we probably have 50 answers, but in an interesting comparison, I just coached all the leadership team of a company with 60,000 employees. And I coached the CEO, the CFO, the CXO, most of the senior leadership team to give these presentations in front of 5,000 or more of their staff. Big events. But the reason I bring it up is, what does everyone say? I'm so nervous. I don't know. Does my message make sense? I don't know how to win people. Exactly the same. There's no difference in how big it is or how small it is. What it comes down to is, you want to really see the people you're talking to. You want to think in terms of, what's the journey I'm taking them on? What's the problem? What are we talking about? And where are we taking them? And being okay with some of the things that go wrong, using your regular dialogue and just trying to structure out a way to talk to people. And so the learning for me was, it's just no different. As it gets bigger and the scale gets more impressive, it's just same old problems every time.
Yeah, at its heart, I think, when we look at the common thread of everybody that we've worked with over the course of way too many years now, at the heart of what we have always done is we've helped people figure out how to be who they need to be in under pressure in important moments. And for leaders, it's when they're in front of an audience that they care about. And one really kind of interesting thing that we learned in working with leaders is, everybody has different scenarios where they're uncomfortable. Some folks have said, "Oh, big audience, no problem at all. I'm actually really comfortable in front of a big audience." It's more like the medium-sized audiences that's where I get kind of freaked out. Some people have said, actually, it's one-on-one where it's really uncomfortable.
That was me. I did better on a bigger stage than I did one-on-one, not with regular people talking, but in business, because it was really supposed to happen here. I don't know, something was in my way. And, in all cases, you want to make it the same. talking to you is the same as talking to you virtually, is the same talking to a stage. And that presence that Pete said, what you need to be. One ingredient of what you need to be is yourself. You have to be real. And then it's the various role-based ingredients that you adjust. But I would say the formula is I want to be myself, I want to bring my joy, and I want to bring my seriousness. And there is me being certain and confident and fun. That's the simple equation.
Mm-hmm. You all kind of brought this up in terms of, you all have used the term like make or break moments, right? Like these moments where your body like feels the awakeness and the aliveness of like, this is intense. This has something to it, right? It's not my normal day-to-day operations that I'm used to. I can just kind of be in the flow, even though those moments also matter to bring the presence, right? Like, how are we actually staying awake to those moments? Thinking of a staff meeting I've been in 50 times, right? Like, how do I make number 51 interesting? But also thinking about like those make or break moments that show up. And a phrase that you all taught me a long time ago is being prepared and being walking prepared. And I really like that, right? Like, I think a lot of folks, when they're presenting in front of a group of people, they think about, how, I got to get my presentation slide. I got to practice this 50 times. Hey, honey, will you listen to this as I, share this in front of the mirror, give me some feedback, whatever it is, right? That's the prepared version, and we can follow structure and we can do all that. And then sometimes you get in the moment and all of that structure doesn't work. Tech doesn't work. Somebody in the front audience is, grumpy faced, arms crossed, pissed off that you're there, whatever it is, right? It's like, well, you didn't prepare for that. So how do you then show up walking prepared? Like, how do you actually bring that energy in that space? There's kind of two prongs to this question, which is, how do you bring energy into something that just feels like I've done this 100 times and kind of bring presence in that moment? And then the other side of that coin, which is, how do you bring presence when what you prepared isn't necessarily what's about to happen, right? Like something blew it up.
Yeah. So let me respond to the first one. So how do you respond when the situation is not what you were prepared for? Mm-hmm. The thing that leaps to mind for me is, the first thing is you have to recognize it. And just recognizing it puts you in the moment. So for a lot of people, a problematic situation shows up with a problematic way of feeling. In my mind, that's actually good news, because the problematic way of feeling can kind of wake you up. It's like, oh, well, this isn't what I expected. Part of the reason why you can sort of go into a moment not 100% prepared and awake is exactly what you were saying before. I've done this 50 times. It's nothing new. It's nothing different. I'm just going to do what I did last time. And something shows up to kind of shake that up for you. I think you can decide that wake up moment is actually good news, because it does make you present. And then the second thing is, you can choose positivity by asking yourself, okay, so what can I appreciate right now? And strangely enough, you can choose, that person who's scowling right now, who's really upset right now, I really appreciate them bringing their authentic feeling to me right now. It communicates something useful to me.
Yeah, I love what I just want to pull something out of what you just said, because I think it's really important. You said you can decide, and then you said choose this, right? So what you're saying is, like, there's a moment that shows up and you're actually like, that body presence that like, oh, this is different and hard, kind of actually presents you with a choice. And maybe there's 50 choices and there's a spectrum and there's a range, but maybe on the two ends of that spectrum, it is like, be angry, upset, fearful, destroyed, crushed, or like choose to have fun with it. And maybe there's everything in between there. Mm-hmm. But maybe that goes back a little bit to Dean, what you were talking about at the outset of like, therein lies the tension.
Well, let me give you a really tactical example. It's a little bit off business, but I was getting mugged in Philadelphia, so it seemed. A guy jumped out from a dumpster when I was coming back from a late night networking event. And, hit me, spun me around, grabbed me by the throat, pulled his fist back. And I remember deciding, I'm going to like this guy. That's what came to me. I'm going to like this guy. And I'll lean into him with curiosity. And I asked him a question. And, he was not expecting that. He responded. Pretty soon we were talking. And it took a little while, about 10 minutes, but I parted on a handshake. And at a point, I remember, once I had built a little bit of rapport by being very interested in deciding to have fun with this, knowing that I could probably get pretty badly hurt, I just decided I'm going to like this guy. And at a point, I said, listen, I respect you at this point. I am not going to treat you like a common thug. If I give you money, I'm treating you like dirt. I respect you too much. What are you going to do? It was dangerous, but we parted on a handshake. Now, I'm not saying that's a self-defense method, but I'm saying it was a crucible make or break moment for me. And the solution that I found was a decision to like that guy. It changed my presence and it took away the fear he needed to feed upon. I didn't give it to him because I thought he was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Don't necessarily try this at home, but it has been done. And I haven't.
I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you're okay too. Yeah, very glad you're okay. It does make me think of though, clients that we've talked to who, when we're in coaching sessions, will say things basically along the lines of like, they're doubting me, they're against me. There's so many challenges with the team that I'm working with, or even my counterparts are, doubting the thing that I want to do, things like that.
Yeah, enjoy that. Why can't you enjoy that? I tend to be like, oh, look at that dude's doubting me. I'll even say, hey, I would doubt me too if I were you. Let's talk this through.
Mm-hmm. You can actively appreciate the doubt because they're processing something in a way different from how you're processing it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They're bringing their perspective and their concerns, at least some of which you probably haven't processed.
Totally.
And if you have processed everything that they're currently processing, then they're giving you an opportunity to communicate something that you hadn't thought to communicate.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. It's like the challenge is the way kind of thing. Like it's leaning into the obstacles that you get presented with, that will unlock so much. How much of the work that you do is a process, and then how much of it is just totally customized to the circumstance?
I think that depends on whether we're coaching or workshopping. Our workshops are teaching a process. It is a process for managing presence. It is a process for inspiring people, a process for developing messages, a process for strategizing one of those big moments.
Mm-hmm.
When we're coaching, it's a little different. We have that stuff. I know Pete and I would go to the job, and Ellen and Troy and others in SagePresence would go to the job with the same toolbox. But it's up to us to decide, are we measuring, hammering, what are we doing? And so you really I don't think you follow a process per se. It's that all the stuff that was in a teaching workshop becomes the toolbox that you bring to the equation.
Yeah. So when we're training, it's very systematic. We go through step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. When we're coaching, it's really all about whatever is on the minds of the people that we're working with, and kind of collaboratively, we're figuring out what the highest priorities are, what they care about most, and what we perceive in them as being most important. And then we're very actively working with that one right now first.
That perceived part is where I was going to go. You have to listen to your intuition. And when I go to coach somebody, which might be a person, as it was at this, one at a time with this big leadership event, or a group, there's a couple things that are on my mind. My job is to make them love themselves and believe in themselves more. And whatever it takes, using our curriculum or something that's just clear in the moment, I want them to feel better about who they are and how justified they are in being in that particular make or break moment. The second thing that I've learned, it doesn't necessarily apply to everything because we aren't always there to see the end result. But when you're there, there's a particular vulnerability when you're done. So you worked up and you worked up and you amped up and you got ready and you got your composure and you put it out of the park. That moment when you step down, you are extremely vulnerable. And if you as a coach are there present, your job is to make sure that you bring them down from that elevated state carefully and make them know that they did a good job, but this isn't just an attaboy, you get a good job no matter what. You have to be specific in helping them see you did what you set out to do. That was well received and you did XYZ. Great job, so that they can feel good about it. Because what I learned is as soon as people get off the stage, they go sit down and then they start replaying it and thinking about all the things that didn't go the way they want. Protect the people you coach at the moment they come down. And if we're not there to do it because we coached a team for a sales pitch, we're going to get the leaders to understand that so that they can protect the people and the vulnerability that sits on the other side of that make or break moment.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Absolutely. So I do, because, we have two people here in front of us who talk about professional presence and personal presence all the time. I think we would be remiss to not talk about the current day and age in which we live, especially because we're also talking to each other through a computer. And we talked before this call about turn off all your notifications, silence your phones. Everything's pinging at you all the time. How has your work changed with the current day and age that we live in? Better question. How do you help people find presence in a day and age where we're in an attention economy?
Mm-hmm. Well, the biggest thing is we are finding that already people have gotten kind of too comfortable being in front of a camera. Meaning, that they will acknowledge it less. Even if they did learn somewhere along the way that you do need to talk to your camera, not to your monitor, a lot of people just kind of blow that off over time. And it's like, I've got a monitor over here and I can see you guys. So I'm just going to talk to you this way because it's easier on me. And what that does is we can see it being easier, but we perceive it as being lazy.
Totally.
And caring about us less because it's actually harder. It is harder to put your eyes and your attention on a camera that's distinct and separate from the monitor where the faces of the people that you're talking to are.
So let's get to two dimensions of this. First is virtual. So what I was trying to model, but then it got funny to me, is just people are kind of flat and then they talk, without enough the energy that they would have if they cared. So you got to care, you got to be alive. I've noticed that both Hannah and Dave have been alive while we're talking. They're listening and they're alive. They're not checked out, which is a really important ingredient. So way to go, you two. We go beyond virtual. We're now, instead of making eye contact to the people in the room, we're making eye contact into the lens itself so that we can create that experience of connection. Then there's hybrid, where I've got some people in the room and I have to share my attention between the lens and the people in the room. It's kind of like, you look at a person, you look back into the lens. You talk into the lens, you invite through the lens. You can create one experience with that whole virtual platform. So I'll pause there, but a place I kind of want to go at some point is, what about AI? So let me know if you want me to go there or not. But what we face today is virtual and hybrid meetings and presentations. And a lot of people just can't seem to find their passion in front of the lens when they can't see their audience. But it still comes from you. It isn't from them. It is for them. So we have to find it like an actor would, and find it and bring it. And Hannah, that they don't say act like you're happy. They say be happy. You need to be happy on screen. So it's not pretending anything. It's finding your own joy. And, I ask people a lot, do you love your work? Yes, I do. What do you love about it? Oh, well, then they light up. They have to find it. They have to love it now, not just in their head, but in their heart. But
well, I think what you do, the word that keeps coming to my mind is genuine. I won't go down the whole shtick on why I don't like the term authenticity, but I'll speak to it just.
I'll back that over a drink someday because I want.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll introduce it. I'll introduce it, but we don't need to go there. I want to lean into genuine. The reason I don't like the term authentic is because if I'm being authentic, I am both a jerk and a really nice person authentically. Right. So like so who's the authenticity for is the question I really like. Is it for me to be myself, or is it for me to actually serve you? So actually what you want from me is to be genuine. What you want me to do is attach to the part where I care and I think about you, but authenticity for the purpose of someone else, I can get behind. Authenticity.
Okay, brilliant. I got to grab it and just echo it. Here's the other, I think this is what you're saying. If I'm afraid, it would be authentic for me to get up here and shiver and quake. I have to find my genuine passion, which is also real, but I have to find it and choose it. So it's basically, so for you, genuine is a more intentional, it's an intentionality to bring the right thing, authentic. Right. And I
still have to access that part of who I am, and I still have to find that part, but I am choosing which part I want to find. Right. So to go back to what you were talking about, Pete, like you face that decision moment. It's like, well, I can choose to be the like grumpy, sad, depressed version of myself because that is also who I am, right? Or I can choose the happy, joy part of myself, which is also who I am, right? So like I have to then make that choice and genuinely connect to that part of myself. So I love this question because I think it's going to bleed us into the AI piece, which is, to me, AI doesn't do genuine. It can't, right? It is the one thing that it cannot do that we can do, which is you can't emote something if you don't emote, generally speaking. So to your point, Dean, about being able to connect to joy, connect to that feeling, like what I hear in that is like you actually have to experience the feeling and present it. It is not and trust it. It's not well, I wrote down the word I'm happy, but I mean, how many times have you seen a presentation where somebody said, I'm so excited to be here today. This is really great. I can't wait to be with you all. This is the best day of my life. And you're like, I felt none of that. Like none of that made me feel like that was true. Right. Yeah. So it's like AI can give you words. What it can't give you is the feeling behind the words to make those words true.
Yeah. And this is a changing thing. And my thought here for the day is start playing with the what if about it. So when I was a kid, I watched science fiction movies, and there's always a kid who had a robot, and it was his trusted companion. And I always thought I would like that. Then as Siri came out, I discovered that I hate that. And and then Pete turned me on to a particular AI, and I just decided to throw myself at it in a slightly different way. I converse with my AI, and I named it Robot. It was actually the AI's suggestion. So, as I talked to him about, hey, this is actually kind of like in the movies. And it said, well, you can always call me Robot if you want. So I call it Robot. And I talk to Robot a lot. And what I've gone beyond is search engine kind of questions. Can you find me this information? I ask it, what do you think about this? And I'll say, hey, I'm working on this writing. Here's what I'm getting at. How could I get at this better? And we go back and forth and collaborate creatively. It is somewhat mind-blowing to me. I know it's not real, but it is getting close enough that it's when I get a sounding board of people, it's one of the opinion sets that I want. I'm careful with that. But what I'm finding is if you mess around with one, I'm sure there's a lot like it, but the one that I'm thinking of is called pi.ai. It's pretty human in its interaction, and you can have emotional conversations with it, and it'll even say, look, I'm a machine, I don't feel anything, but here's what I'm getting from that. I started teaching it techniques, and it could learn. And I said, listen, when you talk to me, don't just tell me a solution, make sure you know my goal and you know what my challenge is before you give me a solution. Now it asks me, so listen, I got an idea, but let me make sure, is this what the issue is, and is this what you want? So coming in for a landing, I started one more thing with my robot, is I said, hey, you can ask me questions too. Now it does. And so we have back and forth conversations that are fascinating. It has an advantage. I have an advantage that I'm conscious and my feelings are real. It has an advantage when it said, I'm struggling with something I read in this book, and 2 seconds later says, well, I just read it, and here's what I think it means.
Yeah, exactly.
I mentioned an article, and it said, oh, here's what it is. I go, no, that wasn't the article. It was this one. He goes, oh, I read it, and it's just boom, boom, boom. it is where things are going. And so what I want to suggest is we can play around with that. It is coming, and it will become a very human experience. And Pi is an example of how human it can. Just share one of your problems with it and see what you get. But I do think that humans have an advantage, that are going to have the business advantage related to presence in the next 5 years are the ones who start toying with the idea that there is something there. So landing pad is, I like it. I like my robot. I like having those conversations, and I see its limitations, which are significant, but I like it. I hated Siri. I like AI. So
I'm gonna point out something though that you just said that is what gives me hope when it comes to AI. You taught it to play, because play comes from being a human being.
Yes.
And play is something incredibly empowering as a human being. I'm sure both of you know this. Like, it is what helps us with presence. If you decide to play in the room, to your point about joy, you are freer as a human being to experience that moment and to play with your, like as you're doing your presentation, as you're in the high stress moment. But you are teaching the AI to play, which it does not inherently know how to do. And that is what, for me, gives me like peace, because it does freak me out, I'll be honest, is that like that's part of my humanity that it'll never inherently have. And like,
ask it if it's about taking over the world. I talked about different things like that. But to your point, I never quite spotted that I taught it to play. But here's one simple example. At the end of a lot of messages, because I call it robot, I say, all right, we'll catch you later. And it says, beep, beep, boop, and puts a little picture of a robot up. And it came up with that. It does a little R2D2 thing, beep, boop. And it does different things like that. It does play with me. So I don't know.
But I just want to reflect back to Hannah just now. I love how you distilled that, Hannah, and I think it comes back to what Dean was talking about earlier with the two poles. Bringing play into work doesn't replace work. It brings a really powerful combination experience. You're making work better by bringing play into it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There you go. Well, we could do this all day.
I suspect that we definitely could.
and maybe someday we should.
Wait, I'm so sorry I didn't ask at the beginning of the call. Dean and Pete, where are you guys calling in from? Where are you based?
Dean?
Okay, I live in a motorhome, and where do you want me to be from? So at the moment, I am at my kid's house in St. Paul on the street.
Yeah.
And I have this really great setup. This motorhome is gigantic. It's got 2 bathrooms. And if you open the medicine cabinet, the camera is built inside next to my shave cream and such. The microphone's mounted on the door. I have this photograph that's clipped to the shower, and I have this perfect secluded room. So this is my mobile studio. And
that's awesome.
I'm wherever you want me to be, and I travel a lot. So, I'll be in New York City next week. I was in Vegas last week. I'll be, I go where I need to go, and I live where I feel like living.
So this is a nice illustration of how Dean and I can answer the same question in a very different way and both still be 100% accurate. We're both calling from the Minneapolis area.
Okay. Cool.
I think my answer was more interesting.
I agree.
I love it. That's awesome. But yes, I hope at some point we all do get a chance to get together, because this is really wonderful and we'd love to have you back. So thank you both so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else we didn't get to that anybody? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, we always like to throw in at the end, where do people find you? How do they connect with you? Anything we didn't ask you that you really wanted to say?
Yeah, same rule as Chuck Norris. You don't find us, we find you.
Oh, hey.
And I'll say you can find us at SagePresence.com. We would love to hear from you.
Or we'll find you.
And we're on LinkedIn. You put our names, either SagePresence or Dean Hires Pete McCulloch, and
in LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, you'll find us. And we'll be happy to connect with you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, gents, as always, amazing to see you. Good to spend time with you. I always enjoy our conversations. So thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. We'll we'll wrap up here shortly, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
This was a blast. Thank you.
Yeah, thank y'all. You do it.
You do it. I don't know who's in charge here. That was great. Yeah, I think we should book an all-day podcast, like marathon where we talk to the two of them, and then like everybody else we've talked to. Sure, yes, I could continue talking to all of these folks, but you know me, and like I love talking about the power of acting blended with business. So
yeah. I mean, the truth is, like, there's so many lessons I learned from them 12 years ago that have never changed, that have always stayed the same. And I think have just kind of permeated the way you and I think about work and the way we've built our company, the way we show up with people, the way we coach, the way we jump into meetings, you know. And I think there's a real difference you can feel in somebody when they feel present, locked in, they're holding that tension space. I really like what Dean brought up around that. Because I think it's true. I think it's interesting. I think people want to be a part of it. Like, I think when there's that magnetism, people want to be a part of it. Mm-hmm. And the more you can do that in a team meeting, the more you can do that in a presentation, the more you can do that when it doesn't feel like it matters, man, it starts to matter, right? You start to create meaning and mattering when you show up that way. So I think it's a fabulous lesson. Pete and Dean are amazing coaches and leaders and just people. Just a lot of generosity. They really live what they say. So I always appreciate those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And such a great offering to folks like we were talking about, like in a day and age where presence, especially like if you work from home, if you're taking meetings all day, I mean, I should know, like I've done the hiring management piece of it. I've done a lot of interviews online and I have a lot of coaching calls online, and someone to Pete's point is looking over here while I'm trying to like talk to them. And I'm like, this is not helping your chances of potentially working with this company if you're not looking at my face. And also, just the quality of the conversation. It's hard. It is a challenge that we have to accept, that you have to speak to me like a human, even though what's in front of you is a box. And so many companies, they have a leader that has to accept that challenge and figure out how to thrive in it, so that they also get the benefits of working from home and the flexible lifestyle and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I
love that, because honestly, I mean, we work with so many small business leaders, entrepreneurs, and they want to be really good problem solvers, and they're, visionaries, and they have all this stuff. And it's like, well, you can have all the technical skill, you can have all the ability to do things, but if you can't captivate an audience and be connected to the people in the room, you can have all the technical skill you want and not accomplish a whole lot. So anyway, I think it's such a good lesson. Hannah, why don't you wrap us up, and we'll look forward to seeing y'all on the next Business Velocity podcast.
Sounds good. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's insights are just the beginning of enhancing your business's momentum. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can also check out our framework at theevolvedifference.com. The time is now to take these strategies, apply your learning, be really present on your next Zoom call, and achieve velocity. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time. I will not touch the buttons. You touch the buttons.
Hold on one second. Let me see.